Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video I'll be reviewing the adventure collection Through the Veil, Tales of the Feywild, designed by Elise Cretel with Kian Bergstrom, Andy Demps, Mallory Dowd, Eleanor Hingley, Clancrafter Fralding, Jordan, Aaron M. Lopez, Chris Love, and Kieran O'Halloran for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick R, Andy, Manuel, Basil, and Tom. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Nima, Marco Stade, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Limpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Sklania, and Nick C. Thank you all very much for your support. I've always been a big proponent of the fairy-themed stuff. We have yet to get anything like that from official D&D campaign hardcover books, and yet there's a lot of fun enemies. There's obviously a lot of fun themes there. There's a whole Feywild realm. There's the Sealies, there's the Unsealies, the Summer Court, the Winter Court. There's good material to be mined from that. Thankfully, a lot of DM's Guild creators know that and have been producing a lot of good content. This one is easily the best of anything that's used the fairy stuff that I have reviewed so far, and I have reviewed quite a number of them. Through the Veil, Tales of the Feywild is an adventure collection that features 10, I'm going to call them mini-adventures. You could also call them encounters. I think the terminology is really getting blurred at this point. Most of them are between 10 and 20 pages long, probably averaging around a dozen pages. And feature different, themes and elements of the Feywild. So whether that's literally using the Fey realm, or maybe just fairy creatures, or themes like, mystical forests and curses. One of them even uses a song, literally like you go through and kind of retell the story that takes place during this song that is sung. And of course, a lot of mystical creatures. There's the winter and the summer court at war with each other, and it impressively covers from tier 1 all the way to tier 4, including a level 20 adventure, which is extremely impressive, and it's actually a pretty cool adventure that seems to work quite well. But from really a variety of levels, a variety of themes, despite all using the overarching theme of the Fey realm, the Feywild, and the fairy creatures, none of the adventures are really very similar. In fact, I was worried we would get too many adventures that, like took place in a forest, for example, because that's obviously a big proponent of a lot of fairy tales. They tend to be very much in the forest, and it's not really the case here. There's a lot of caves. There's one of them that actually takes place mostly in a village that's in kind of, it's like a sister city situation where one's in the material realm and one's in the fairy realm, which is kind of cool. And the actual level 20 adventure is in a glacier, which is pretty cool because it's, again, that summer and winter theme. There's a lot of actual frost stuff going on with the fairy themes. What's really most impressive about this entire production, though, is the production values. This may be one of the most impressive products I've seen from the DM's Guild from a pure layout and presentation standpoint. I mean, I like the content for sure. There's some adventures I like better than others, and I'll go through kind of a brief overlay because I don't want to. The whole thing is 138 pages, so I won't be able to dissect each one of these adventures completely, but I will give an overview of all of them. But the production values, we get this really great layout. I actually really like the way this green looks with the sidebar with the darker green. I think that looks gorgeous, makes all the text and art pop. Original artwork throughout, and Halle freaking Luya with the amazing full color grid battle maps. I'm going to do a little dance for that because on so many times do I have to put that as a complaint that we don't get maps, and even when we do get maps, they're usually, very minimalist in design, and I love that we get gorgeous maps for all of these adventures. That's just, it elevates everything to such a wonderful degree, and we get, in addition to being embedded in here, and they look absolutely amazing, we also get a zip file included with the product purchase that includes separate DM versions with the annotations on there, as well as player versions and the grid and non-gridded versions, which, holy crap, that's just absolutely incredible, and I love that we got this for all these adventures. And the content is already good. but having all of these maps for all these adventures, some of them you'll get one, if it's like, a single dungeon, you'll get the one map, and otherwise if it's a collection of scenes, you'll get like multiple maps for those. So they even thought of all that, but that really elevates it from, pretty good to exemplary in my book. And that, is combined with having the original artwork, these professional map makers, the way that the gorgeous layout, like the text, everything is, good sized. It's all, I don't have to squint, and I'm at, this is, what is the default, 78%, I think, that to look at it from here on the PDF, like, it just looks amazing. So that's automatically, it is one of the most gorgeous products on the DM's Guild that I have had the pleasure of reviewing. Content-wise, as I mentioned, it includes 10, I'm going to call them mini adventures. You could probably, some of them you could argue are encounters. None of them are really, full-blown adventures. Certainly none of them are campaigns, and they're not designed to be. They're designed to be smaller. Usually on the smaller end, about 10 pages. Some of them might get a little longer, at closer to 20 pages. I can provide a brief overview of each one just so you can get an idea of what you're looking at for all these adventures. Setting Sun has a really nice map involved. This one's actually kind of a standard just exploration dungeon. It all takes place in the one area. And this is the one that when I first started reviewing this product, I thought, oh, these are basically encounters. They're taking one map and then making that the adventure, which to me is the difference between a layer. If it's a layer, then it's a single area that you can play as a self-contained, dungeon or story. Usually you'll get like, the adventure hook at the entrance or something, or, some reason to bring the players there, and then they have your adventure in the dungeon, and then they complete that dungeon. It kind of tells its own complete story. That's what I think of when I think of a layer, which is really what this is. It tells its complete adventure, and it's a nice little, dungeon with different paths and things, but I didn't actually get the Fey theme very well from this one. It's the forest is on fire, and an elderly druid, beseeches you to go save her apprentice. And it's got this really dramatic ending where the elderly druid kind of passes on her, mantle to her protege, but we didn't really get any role-playing notes for that during the course of the adventure, and I wasn't even sure she was supposed to accompany the players, so that kind of fell flat. There's also a weird circumstance where you come across a bunch of orcs holed up in a cave, and right next door a bunch of sleeping bears. And I wasn't sure if the bears are supposed to be allied with the orcs, or if that's just a weird design of two just completely different faction enemies just chilling next to each other. I can't imagine either the orcs or the bears would be fine with that situation of just being right next to her. I realize my webcam's kind of covering the map a little bit there, but that was a bizarre situation. But it's a fine dungeon. I don't think it's probably not in the top half for me. Lollin's Lament, no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This one seems very, very like Celtic folklore, and this one has a really cool idea where it takes a song, which I guess is an original song, I don't know, and you kind of play through the the song, as most folk songs do, tell a story. It's a very tragic story of this father who murdered, or who caused his daughter to die, I guess, inadvertently, but it was definitely his fault. And you kind of replay these scenes and situations. You go into this, it's the mystical forest theme, and if you can play through the events of the song, then you can actually figure out what's going on. You can like avoid enemies and know how to get through the dungeon and all that. So I thought that was a really, really cool way of doing it. In the finale, which hags, are the classic fairy enemy here. If you're not using just straight up like, soldiers of the winter court or summer court or something, typically you're going to run into hags. So if there is one thing that's used a lot here, it's hags. But hags are a good theme of fairy tales. Obviously they're capable of curses and all that. And hags are just fun. Like, hags are so much fun. There's different kinds of hags. They can be, they can be in combat. They can be solo and be mischievous. They can be in a coven. They can be, kind of a cult thing. They can do their own. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of different things you can do with hags, and there's a lot of kind of varieties of hags. So I don't mind seeing hags as enemies in a lot of cases, and that is the final boss here. But I love the idea with the song. I think it's a really cool idea that you go through the whole story with the song. I'm not going to go over the level range for all these, by the way, but if it's important, I'll mention it. But basically, it goes in order of kind of the Tier 1, Tier 2, and then by the end of it, we'll talk about the Tier 4 adventure. But I don't want to spend too terribly long on any one of these, because I do want to try to cover all of them if I can. Eyes of Stone. This one may be one of my favorites because it just does a great job with the theme. You know, when I think of these adventure collections, I feel like it's a Iron Chef challenge. You know, where you get really good chefs and cooks and everything, and they're opening the basket and they have to make a amazing meal given whatever food was in the basket. And in this case, the food that's in the basket is the Fae. So, you know, the creators are given, okay, you've got to make some adventure out of the Fae and go. And that's what ties all the adventures together. So partly when I'm, you know, kind of reviewing all these adventures between each other, I'm thinking, how well do they use the theme? And I think the first adventure I don't think used the theme very well. Eyes of Stone, I think, uses it very incredibly well. The Wild Hunt, obviously popularized by the Witcher subtitle, Witcher 3, is definitely a fairy thing of the huntsman with the hounds hunting. In this case, it's a curse. I mean, it just checks all the boxes. It's got a curse. There's a immortal elf, I guess, has fallen in love with a woman from the village. She's been cursed. He's been cursed. You know, classic curse maneuver. And you're forced to, or you're not forced. Your party is motivated to go and rescue a man who is supposed to heal the stone that kind of protects this village, and at the same time you realize all these curses are happening. There's a really neat series of trials you have to go through, which impressively they have really good maps too. The Mirror Maze, where it's like the Prestige, where you teleport and you create clones of but the two clones are the same, and then eventually when you leave, the old ones go away, but that could really screw up parties in a really fun way. You have to pick out the right fruit to eat. There's a bunch of poison and a bunch of quicklings and pixies that'll attack you. Just a really neat series of trials before you finally complete everything, and then the very climax is the actual Wild Hunt comes on. You have to run away while they're being attacked by these blink dogs and shadow mastiffs and everything. And you get another map for this. Did I mention how cool the maps are? Just look at this screen. You get an awesome map and a huge full color artwork like that. That is amazingly cool. Anytime you can get original artwork for exactly your scene that you want is huge points. I mean, that looks so good in any of these products. So I really like that adventure. I think it's really fun. I think it checks all the boxes of the Fae, and it managed to be a fun dungeon crawl that's got all the different role playing, social combat, all those different pillars in there. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Aosc. Not the representative from New York, but Aosc. I don't know. This one this is the urban adventure. That's right. So this one was kind of unique, not urban, but like a city, but like a village, because most of the fairy tale stuff takes place in forests. That's a very classic theme, and this one is actually in a village with a portal right in the middle. And this is the sister city one, where there's one in the material plane, and then there's I guess a carbon copy city in the Feywild, and they kind of are basically allied together. And unfortunately, hags up to no good. They attack the fairy city, and then they end up invading the material city. And we get a map for the general store, which is all set up to be a bunch of boggles, setting up traps and stuff. It's very much a tier 1. I think this one's tier 1 adventure, 3 to 4, first to 4th level characters. Yep, exactly tier 1. I just think it's a fun setting, being able to do the fairy stuff while they actually invade a village. You do at one point go and hunt down the hags in a cave. The hags aren't there. There's a gelatinous cube there and a bunch of blink dogs. And you return to the village. You have a feast. And then the hags have disguised themselves as villagers. And there's a really cool thing where you go and one of the hags tries to draw you in, where she's like, help me, and of course you go and find out, and she attacks you, and you find the corpse of the person that she was actually trying to pretend to be, or somebody who she had killed, and then later you see that person trying to also screw up the party and bring the villagers against the party. And the party can put 2 and 2 together and be like, wait a minute, we saw your corpse in there. And of course, that's the big red flag. So I thought that was really neat. And I thought that was a cool design. If you can make it work. It's always tricky. It's hard to trick players because most players are very astute and, cautious and would, try to work out. And a lot of, it can be hard for them to leave the dungeon without finding the hags, for example. So if you can get that far, I think it does a lot of really cool things. I just like that setting of being more about the village than about going to the forest. Corruption of the Mother Dryad also feels like another box being checked, which is a classic, the forest is being poisoned or sickened by something. In this case, it's the daughter of a mother tree, has kind of corrupted herself in a weird way. This one has another, cool tiny dungeon, very, very cool map. It's pretty short. You kind of go in, you fight some oozes and some corrupted dryads, and then you put the staff in the pedestal, the doors open, and you deal with like another final thing. It's very combat heavy, but I think it's got a lot of personality. It definitely sells the theme of the actual forest turning evil and everything. And the cool thing is, in the final boss battle, you can actually see the poor 12-year-old girl in the middle of this whatever she is, some kind of like ooze monster, and you can actually free her out of it every time it attacks you, and then as you damage it, you're supposed to be able to see her also. And there's obviously like a good ending and a bad ending if you don't, free this poor girl, and you can end up killing her if you just kill the thing that's basically been or her manifestation of her evilness or her downfall or whatever. But I thought that was a really cool additional thing to add to the final boss fight. That was really neat. The Fomorian who would be king. This one is probably the weakest adventure in my opinion. This one, I didn't really get the Fey theme very well. Fomorians, I guess, is a fairy thing, but it's just kind of a standard cave dungeon crawl. This one also does a weird thing where it has a bunch of like, I was gonna say Disney references, but I guess the Disney stuff is also fairy tale. But this one has like, there's 7 Dwerger who is supposed to be like the Snow White. It's basically does the Snow White thing, and there's like a woman asleep, but it's not a woman, it's a petrified vampire, and she's actually charmed the Dwerger, so kind of a really dark, twisted version of fairy, which, if anything, the Disney versions are like the light, hearted, good-natured version of the original fairy tales, which are very dark and twisted. That's actually OG. But it's just, I don't know, it just kind of comes out of left field by the end, because the whole, like, Fomorian's actually, like, halfway through the dungeon, and then you meet up with the Dwerger and the petrified vampire woman who basically could kill you or could be an ally. I don't know, I was a little bit confused about how that one should work from a maybe social role-playing aspect, and the dungeon just seemed okay. The Frost Prince in Summer. This one is very, very heavy on exploration and environmental storytelling. In fact, I kind of wish it went a little bit further with the environmental storytelling, and by that I mean, like, every time, like, video games do this very well, almost out of necessity if you're like a solo, especially like a shooter or something like Bioshock. But that is, you're gaining elements of the story by discovering things in the room, whether that's journals or audiobooks. In this case, which I think is very effective in D&D, you're getting like visions and illusions and stuff. And here it's the this Winter Prince has his love spurned by the Summer Princess, classic Romeo and Juliet, and he has basically fallen asleep inside the ruins of the Summer Palace, and then created this whole manifestation of himself as a hero trying to rescue her, and you're trying to follow this along. I wish it would have done that a little more and had actually more stories of that throughout the adventure, and maybe played around with that a little bit, but instead it's kind of, you get a little bit at the beginning, and then it's kind of a standard like exploration dungeon. There's not a whole lot of like enemies, you're kind of searching around. There's a lot of stuff in this garden area. It's a huge fight here. But otherwise, and at the end, it's actually a puzzle at the end, which is really impressive. Almost every single climax in the history of D&D adventures have a boss fight at the end, and this one actually says a straight-up puzzle, which I think is pretty cool. So there's no actual battle at all. You complete this puzzle where you put all the things in the right, statue, and you identify the symbols and everything, and then the Winter Prince thaws, and then he's like, oh yeah, thank you, I had a bad couple of centuries and kind of created this whole situation, so sorry. So I think it's neat from an exploration standpoint, but I wish it had been tweaked a little bit to make it even more about his storytelling, and a few more scenes could have added a lot more to that. We go to this one. Unfortunately, this one uses a lot of references to the girl with the dragon tattoo. Every single part is a different of that series, the title of the series. I never read the books or watched the movie, so I don't know if that's actually a direct tie to that, a problem with Fomorians. But this one is which I thought we get a lot more of this, which is the whole winter and summer courts, which I know is a big thing in, like actual Shakespearean fairy tale stuff, which is definitely can be used in D&D. I think a lot of those stat blocks do exist. This one, I think this is the one that bites down a little bit more. So this one, the problem I had with this one is these are mini adventures, so that's why the layers work well. If it's based in like one area, like whether it's a dungeon or a zone or something, you keep everybody there, you tell a complete story, and that's how you get something done in 12 to 15 pages. This one, it's got a lot going on. Basically, it's this brewing war between the summer and winter court, and you end up uncovering this plot of all these portals appearing in the summer court with the winter invading them. And at one point, you actually meet with the queen of the fairies, Titania, for the summer court. And she tells you to go and, first this whole sequence where you recover those documents. And then you have to go into the Fey Dark and like go into this fortress, which I think this is one of the uglier maps, too. It's hard to tell it's even a fortress, at least from this blown up. It's just too large. I think it's just too... It bit off too much for what it needs to be. This is, again, this mini adventure, and this tries to tell what really sounds like a full-on... campaign, or at least series of maps and areas, but trying to condense that, and it really feels like you're just kind of plucking the characters up and putting them in all these situations. So I didn't think it was bad from a design standpoint, but I think it needed to be way bigger and probably wasn't a good fit for the format of being, a 12 to 15 page adventure. So I think it's a little much. The Gypsum Forest, now we're getting up to like tier 3, by the way. We're at 13th level. This one is very linear, uses a much different map style than the others, and plays with the theme of the summer and winter courts being just the two sides of the same coin. And literally in this case, you can see it's the exact same map, just flipped, kind of inverted with different colors and stuff. And you basically just end up, exploring your way through there. It's the only plot is you're just trying to escape. So you find yourself in this mystical forest, you're drawn in there, and you adventure your way through and eventually cross a portal into the winter part of it, and then get to the very end, and you meet somebody that tells you, hey, you got to plant the seed back at the spring, and on your way back you fight an ice dragon, and then you make it back and plant the seed. So it's not bad. There's just not a whole lot of actual storytelling here. It's much more immersive and evocative, and you're getting scenes, and it is neat to see scenes back and forth. I do have a major complaint about the way this dungeon is organized, though, because the designer, for some reason, went 1, 12, 2, 11, 3, 10, in an effort to, I guess, convey the fact that these areas are mirror images of each other. So they decided to have the descriptions for the flip side after the other side, but it makes it difficult to read from a design, or from a DM standpoint, because it still linearly goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it doesn't help me to jump ahead to the Frost Realm at all. So I wish it would have just done that and then gone 7, 8, just do it in order at that point. So I think that was a misstep, but otherwise it's perfectly fine adventure. It's a little more exploration focused. Winter Wonderland is the 20th level adventure, and we do not get a whole lot of these. How do you make a 20th level adventure? I have no idea. I've never even gotten close to playing that high level of D&D, although we're actually, shoutouts to our current campaign, we're playing a high level campaign right now for the first time. This one actually seems really, really cool, though. I mean, how do you make a level 20 adventure in, again, 12 to 15 pages? Well, the Winter Prince's heart has been stolen, so he's dying, and it's causing all kinds of havoc in the entire Fey realm. And it's a classic thriller where there's a thing that multiple factions are after, which is always a great plot design tool. And in this case, the multiple factions, where do they list them? There we go. The Eladrin, who are trying to obviously get it back, the Winter folk, and it is possible to ally with them. The Drow, who are trying to just get it to protect themselves from Lolth, Loyalists, the Fomorians, who of course are always after the Fae, and the UNT, who are just trying to destroy the heart to worship, to summon their own deity Mershulk. And then in addition to that, there's some NP and what do you call them? Neutral factions, I guess. There's a Jabberwock who just wants to eat everything, just a monster, and there's a bunch of what are they called? Quicklings, and I guess Boggles, who are just trying to jack with the players completely. They're just in it for just funsies. And it even mentions, DM's note, there are 7 antagonists within the Glacier Maze. Not all 7 must be encountered, so you can choose to use whatever you want. And that's really neat. The actual maze itself looks like a freaking crazy nightmare right here, and it's designed to be this huge 3-dimensional, just labyrinthine, unmappable thing. So from somebody who plays in Roll20, I'm not sure how I would actually do that. What I would have liked to see is maybe just create one of these and make it so, you can kind of open and close different caves as you need to and have the players jump in and out of areas. So it's a very odd from a mat standpoint, but it's just a huge ton of scripted events or random encounters. And there's also all those different factions, and all of those enemies I listed, the Drow, the Eladrin, all those, all have detailed like ambush tactics, because at that level, you have to give them, wands of magic missiles and +1 weapons, and they got to be like elite, just the best of the best in terms of their intelligent tactics. As level 20 players are just freaking godlike. So, and I love that the beginning is like, the adventure hook is almost like, look, you guys are like, gods now in your realm. Like at this point, the fucking fairy realm was just calling you up and saying, hey, we need your help. Come over here and help us out of a situation. So I thought that was pretty funny. But the map is a little bit crazy, but I think this is it looks like a cool adventure. There's a lot going on. Of course, there's the twist with it's hags. It's always hags, but in this case, it's pure hags, which are super high-powered hags, and there's a lot of super high-powerful enemies. I just love that it's all these enemy basically rival adventuring parties from different all these different races and factions. So that was really cool, and that's a pretty neat way of doing a level 20 adventure. All right, I managed to do that in under half an hour. Went through all 10 adventures. Let's cover my pros and cons for Through the Veil, Tales of the Feywild. Pros: gorgeous layout and artwork with some of the best production values I've seen on the DM's Guild. Super thumbs up with just how it looks. Pro: each adventure is well organized, beginning with the background summary and multiple adventure hooks. I appreciate that as well. There's a formatting and a system that every single adventure adheres to, which I appreciate just from a reading through standpoint, but also it does help to start off with a couple paragraphs of the background, what happened. The adventure summary breaks it down. Some folks do it like here's part 1, part 2. Others are just like here's a couple paragraphs, and then we get usually multiple adventure hooks to get the player into that situation. Pros: the adventures include all 4 tiers of play, including a level 20 adventure, which is very impressive. Usually we're covering maybe levels 1 through 8, or maybe levels 4 through 13 or something. This one really covers all 4 tiers of play in 10 adventures. And pro: full color grid battle maps for every adventure with separate DM versions and player handouts, gridded, non-gridded, all that good stuff. I love to see it. Cons: if you can't already tell, I really have very few complaints. I have no cons. Yes, there are adventures I like more than others. You could tell some of them I was really excited about. Others I was like, it's okay. But because it's an adventure compilation, I'm judging it as a whole, as the sum of its parts, and I really don't have any overall complaints. And even the ones I didn't like, I feel like they did at least a halfway decent job of exploring the themes. Final verdict: from cursed songs to poisoned trees, summer quartz and winter quartz, and even a full level 20 mega dungeon, Through the Veil, Tales of the Feywild features an excellent assortment of mini adventures that draw from the intriguing realm of the Fey. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.